Alex here with a video on document preparation services. This is a question that I get sometimes, but a very recent email inspired this video because I should, I guess, talk about my opinion on these because this is something that probably a lot of viewers on this channel have looked into. And that's all I can really give you guys. I can give you an opinion. And I guess I could talk about how the law works in Nevada and probably how it works in other states with rare exceptions. So in Nevada, we do have a statute that discusses these types of businesses. They treat them as businesses. They're run by non-lawyers, usually a paralegal. And I mean, we don't really have a certified sort of paralegal definition in Nevada, so it could even be a self-proclaimed paralegal. They don't actually have to have gotten some kind of degree in it or anything like that. As far as I know, the universal thing that's pretty consistent across the board is that these non-attorney organizations are not allowed to give legal advice. So if you are in one of those rare jurisdictions where there is some sort of pseudo lawyer type organization that can give legal advice in certain situations, um, that is different, and probably you're not going to want to listen to this video because my opinions won't really apply in that case. Maybe my opinions on pricing later on in the video do, but the rest of what I'm going to say doesn't really apply. So what I'm going to go into now is that the thing that is difficult about that industry is that it is by definition not going to satisfy all of the customers' needs. They could break the law and satisfy all of the customers' needs potentially. I mean, if they give bad legal advice and they cause the um, customer to lose on a certain issue, that could bring all kinds of backlash and in the form of reviews or even lawsuits or there's charges that the state can file for unauthorized practice of law. They can shut the business down. The state bar can get injunctions. There's all kinds of things. But a little bit of irony there is there's a lot of situations where actual licensed attorneys give people bad advice, and none of those protections come into play. There's a certain level of incompetence that is acceptable by the state bars. I mean, there's certain mistakes lawyers will make that they will just not really go into. It's got to be pretty bad for the state bar to prosecute a lawyer for or subject a lawyer to disciplinary proceedings for incompetence. It's usually like stealing money or not communicating with the client or just flat out not filing stuff, which I guess is somewhat common. But for the most part, if they do file something and they just got it wrong, they didn't know the law or something, nobody's going to touch that. When it comes to a paralegal, it's different because they'll say you shouldn't have been giving advice in the first place. So it's just a dangerous game to play for these document preparation organizations to bend the rules. So if we go into an organization that's following the law, you're going to end up with what I said earlier, which is an organization that is by design and definition not intended to fully satisfy its customers. And so that is one of the most difficult things for people who are too poor to afford lawyers to really accept and understand. Is they're too poor to afford a real lawyer, so they need to get help from a pseudo lawyer or a document preparation organization, company, whatever, and they don't realize that they're walking into a situation where they are not going to be satisfied. They will be given some assistance, and I wouldn't even go as far to say as it's 50% of the assistance, unless perhaps it's a joint petition, like both parents or both married parties agree, and they're not even fighting each other anyway. If they both agree and they're not fighting each other, they're really just filling in a few, blanks and filing something with the court. You probably won't even get a hearing. They'll probably just send you the decree in the mail. That kind of situation, you're probably going to have very happy customers consistently. But when you have a situation where people are fighting in court and they're actually going to have to make appearances at hearings and argue, most of the challenge is going to come up at that point. And even if you're talking about preparing documents, there are certain documents that there's just almost nothing that the document prep company can do. There's like, they can do a lot with maybe a financial disclosure form, motion opposition notices, requests for submissions, notice of change of address. There's a lot of little paperwork that they can do a lot. But then there's motions, which people who are in high conflict child custody cases mostly need help with. And those motions contain points and authorities. And now you have a factual background and a legal analysis, statutes, rules, and case law come into play. And the document preparation companies are not really supposed to go into that analysis. They can file, I guess they can prepare a motion, but you're supposed to tell them everything that goes in there. And that's not usually what people do. I wouldn't even say mostly what people do. I'd say 99.9% of the time, the customer walks in and they say, I need to modify custody or I need to modify child support. Well, now the document preparation specialist or worker is put into this tough position where he has an individual who thinks that they can just tell them the circumstances of their case and that the document preparation guy is going to find all the statutes and rules and case law and stuff them in that document, which is practice of law. That they're not allowed to do that. And this is the big thing for people on this channel is high conflict child custody, and they're fighting, and that's the big thing they need. And they're going to go in and get assistance either from one of these companies that's going to break the rules and help them, or one of these companies that's going to follow the rules and give them almost no assistance. And it's not their fault. They're following the rules. That's all they can do. And this is really where I get stuck on these document preparation, companies. I get stuck on this, and I suppose it wouldn't be so bad if they were upfront about it, which a lot of them aren't. And maybe it's because if they are upfront about it, their customers will just walk away. They won't pay for their services. So that's sort of a catch-22 there, where the more honest you are, the more customers you lose. And the other problem is the charge. So too often I think that these companies peg their charges at the rates that attorneys charge. So what I mean by that is, let's say we have a certain type of document. They sort of think what's the estimated amount that a lawyer would charge for this, and they maybe take 75% off or 50% off, which is really not fair. It's not fair because the lion's share of the value of an attorney preparing that document is their knowledge. It's not the physical typing of the stuff on the piece of paper. And so when these prices are pegged at percentages of what a lawyer would charge, I think from the document preparation or the company's perspective is that's fair. We're giving you a deep discount. You're getting what the law intended. You're getting services for much cheaper than a lawyer would charge. But when it comes from the perspective of value being provided, that's where I don't agree. There is some value that is being provided, but it's not that much value. To be honest, it's not. And so when you have lawyers that are charging, a lot of them $500, $600 an hour, but let's just say $250 an hour. Some of them charge $250 an hour. Should the document preparation specialist feel that their time is worth $125 an hour? That's half off. In my opinion, no. Should it be worth $60 an hour? That's 3/4 off. In my opinion, no. I don't think that. I think a really good document preparation specialist at most should be getting $30 an hour. And it's just because it's clerical work. They're taking the instructions of a client and they're putting what the client says to put on the pieces of paper. Once you get to the point of a document preparation person saying, well, hold on, I have expertise. I've done these motions before, and you start to wander into the area of, I know what points and authorities to put in the motion. Now you're wandering into the area of unauthorized practice of law. And things start to get dicey. So that's really the problem that I have and why I struggle with these, talking about these, because it's just one of those situations where right out of the gate, you are not going to be given the services that you need because that's what the law says they can do. They can only do that little tiny bit for you. So the one of the weird things that I've also thought about when it comes to these is these document preparation services are probably really good for people who are capable of representing themselves. The people who are okay with doing a lot of their own legwork, that are like going to be acceptable of the idea of, yes, this person's only going to give me a few pieces of assistance, and I'm going to have to go on my own and do the rest. which I feel like after one or two times, they're just going to stop going back because they're going to just figure it out on their own. They're going to just say, well, very useful service, but I can do that. So I may as well just save the money. So you've got a situation where the people who benefit most are the people who are going to want a lot more. And what they're going to want is for the document preparation service to break the law. And that's sort of the problem that I see with that industry. Um, there's probably a lot of people who have gotten advice from a paralegal that the paralegal shouldn't have given them, that actually worked out for them, that helped them a lot, and they won. And so I'm sure there are situations where the rules are being broken and people are actually getting a good deal and a good outcome. And that's not to say that that's okay. They're taking a risk because when it comes to high conflict child custody cases, as you all know, there are very messed up people involved in these cases. The types of people that if they lose, they will turn on that document prep company without a second thought and backstab them. And it's just I could never personally do that because that's the reality of it. That's just what's going to happen to you, and it isn't fair, but that's just what's going to happen. And as I mentioned at the very beginning of this video, it really doesn't fit into the sort of general principles of fairness because attorneys who are licensed make mistakes all the time in family court. They make mistakes and nothing happens to them because they're licensed. So they're licensed, they're allowed to make the mistake. If you're unlicensed and you make that mistake, somebody will tell on you. Um, I guess that's all I really have. This is really one of those videos where the comments are going to probably help as much as the video itself. So if you have hired one of these companies and you had a good or a bad outcome, go ahead and mention it down in the comments below. Let other people know what you think, because I mean that's one of the things that I never use. I never use one of those companies. So my viewers may have used those companies and they may have much more insight than I do, personal experiences, whether good or bad. Please post them in the comments below. And I will see you guys next time.